So especially nowadays, like, you may have actually just not flipped me, but like definitely that's something I kind of took for granted. It was like, oh yeah, like people coming over here are going to be able to find work, but that's not true most times.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started. Let's do the review. But before we get into the video itself, I'm joined by a bunch of people here, including one person I just met moments ago. Of course, Nick's here. Conversations on the Coast. Nick, got any words to say about yourself?
I'm a guy who's been interested in SE for maybe 5 years, kind of dabbling in it for 2 years. And this summer, I actually started going out on the street and doing it. And now I have a podcast. I don't know how that happened.
Cool. And the person I met moments ago, that was Bill. You kind of met Nick, and Nick kind of roped you in here. Nick mentioned like, hey, I can bring my buddy Bill over, and I was like, hell yeah, bring Bill. Anything you got to say about yourself, Bill?
Nick came by the church where I'm a pastor, and we had a great chat. I also love Stoicism, so he was a captive audience so that I could chat with him about those things.
Neat. Jamie, we've talked a decent amount of time previously, mostly in text, but I asked you to come, and you're here, and that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm Jamie, and I'm a big fan of SE, and hopefully going to start trying it out soon, but fan right now, and looking forward to reviewing the video.
Cool. And then last but not least, Cosmo.
Greetings. Hi. Yeah, I just started recently getting out there back in July when Sound Epistemology came through town and gave me the sort of backup that I needed, which was really indispensable, when you're getting out there for the first time, to have someone have your back like that. So, really kudos to him. I hope he continues to be able to do that, because I don't know how I would have done it without him to start it, And I've loved philosophy for a long time, and it's a better way to engage with people. The way that I have engaged with people in the past hasn't been as successful. Let's just say that. So,
all right,
you go where the results are, basically. I think it's a great thing.
And just a little bit of background about the video before we jump into it. So this was at the University of Minnesota. So I went out there with Matt's Mighty Conversations, and we set up on the campus. He knew the busiest place on campus, and I just kind of went with it. And I mostly I actually had 2 group interviews. This was one of them. And I was kind of hoping to do group interviews, but all these 3 guys just walked up. I didn't even have to like ask for a group interview. It just kind of occurred naturally. And I did edit out one little small chunk. I'll point that out at the beginning when we're trying to determine the topic. They go on kind of find a topic, but it was like about computer science, and they all agreed, and it was like, is it difficult? And they all were like, yeah, it's difficult. So I just took that part out because it was like kind of boring. But without further ado, we'll jump right into it.
Recording. Awesome. Okay, cool. So what I do out here is I talk to people about values, about beliefs, all that sort of stuff. Usually it's one-on-one, but I'll never turn down a group. That's awesome. So is there something that you guys are passionate about, disagree on perhaps? What are your thoughts?
On what's something important people should do?
Sure.
Or just generally anything?
It could be anything. It could be based on the prompt here.
Okay.
Anything that comes to mind. Like it could be like the Israel-Palestine thing. It could be a religious thing. It could be a different political belief. It could be something as mundane as you think that exercising is really important and you think it's not as important.
I don't know. I don't know either of you. I have no idea.
Oh, I thought you guys were all friends.
No, these two are friends.
Yeah.
I'll step out. You do these two.
No, you come in. You can be a part of this.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Just a minute.
Yeah, just a second ago.
Cool. Hey, I'm bringing people together.
Yeah, exactly.
How about how about I do a
That's where that edit occurred, by the way. So they went off on computer science. I cut that part out.
surprise one?
Okay.
And we'll go from there.
Awesome.
So let's have this be the middle point right here.
Awesome.
This will be neutral. This
Okay.
will be over here that you agree.
Okay.
And this over here will be that you disagree.
Awesome.
So the prompt will be, and I'll tell you guys when to go to your spots.
Okay.
Will be that we should allow unlimited immigration from other countries into the United States. And think about that for a minute. We got agree, disagree, neutral. And you can go in 3, 2, 1. Go to your spots.
You still like unlimited?
Unlimited. We will allow as many people in here to the country as possible. Of course, we can like say, hey, this person should be in prison.
Yeah.
They've done some horrible things. We won't let that person. But we're not going to say only 100,000 people or only 50,000 people or only 10,000.
I say I agree.
Think so?
Yeah.
I mean, sounds like there's definitely like regulations there, but like it's like still like not bound for people to come in.
I don't think we should have like a number being like only 5,000 people can come into U.S. this year. Because like my parents are immigrants.
Right.
Like-
My parents are refugees.
Yeah. So I'm like, if there was like a hard limit, which I'm sure that there is, like I probably wouldn't even be here getting an education. Like I relied on my parents and my grandparents immigrating here for me to like be born a U.S. citizen and stuff. So like for me personally, I think the more the merrier. Like I don't understand this idea of like xenophobia where it's like, oh, like we don't need non-Americans because like there's no real such thing as an American. Like an American is like a concept in my opinion. Like the only real Americans were the Native Americans, and they got like killed in mass by like war, famine, and then sickness brought in by like European colonizers. So like I personally am like, no one's really here who's like originally here. So there's not really an American idea in my mind. Yeah.
Did you agree with everything you said? Do you have a similar perspective?
I think I'm.
He just dives right in. And in previous Spectrum Street Epistemology videos I've seen, there's kind of, I don't know if they're asked to or if it just happens, but people move without saying anything about their reasons. And he's just kind of tipping his reasons here, which I wonder if he's actually impacting the beliefs of the others there. Because I think usually when people do Spectrum, they have people pick their spots, and then they get to say their reasons, and then we see whether the reasons cause other people to change their mind and move to different spots.
Yeah,
I like
I think the people already went to their spots. They just happened to be standing in the right spot. So he's the only one who actually moved.
Sure.
Can I
Yeah,
ask, are they all on neutral right now? What spot are they on right now?
The one fellow on the right, he is on agree. The fellow in the middle is on neutral, and the other guy is like slightly disagree.
Okay.
So then perhaps the designated spots should be places where people aren't already standing.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe I should have had him
Ideally.
back up or something.
It
Yeah,
was a
something.
coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That could maybe help.
Are we giving comments on, are we just kind of giving comments on anything?
Sure.
Like the video. And one thing I like about the Spectrum SC videos I've seen is it takes, there's usually like a moment where it's like everyone say where you're on, and the ones I've seen, there's like words on the ground. So they don't even necessarily need to do that. But there's like sort of a moment where everyone compartment, like just kind of, you just process where everyone is for the viewer. I think that would have helped here, because I was also a little confused if they had actually moved or not. So
Yeah, totally agree.
Also, they were just spots on the
What's the
ground.
likelihood that in a group?
Sorry,
Sorry, say again.
I didn't mean. Go ahead. You go first.
What's the likelihood with something like that in a group that people will affect one another's willingness to stand in a spot? Peer pressure before they even have a chance to speak.
Yeah, I think that can be an influence, and somebody might be like if they have a particular stance that is against the other people in that group, they might not be willing to speak up and say how they truly feel. That could be a possibility.
Yeah,
And
especially when
culturally,
it's a
some
politically
people will
charged
prefer.
topic.
Yeah, and culturally, some people will prefer the group over individuality. I come from Alaska, where group dynamic and keeping group harmony is more important than
Mhm.
your own particular stance.
Yeah, that could have an impact for sure.
And
What
as
were you
far
saying,
as
Cosmo?
Go ahead,
I
Cosmo.
think,
Sorry.
You're good. Slight
I
delay.
think it could definitely have an impact, and I think that's fine, because then if it does have an impact, then you can just ask them what caused them to move and why did they think that was a good reason. Basically, like I think that one of the key benefits of Spectrum is that it gives people multiple chances to move, and then when they do move, you can then ask them what caused them to move and why did they think that was a good reason. So even if it wasn't a good reason, even if we make errors, we learn from them. So it gives you the chance to ask, why did you think that was a good reason? Even if it wasn't.
That was more or less what I was going to say. Like if it does influence them, they can just move and then talk around that. And that's an interesting aspect of the Spectrum SC format.
Yeah, it's collaborative. And I think that's what it shares in common with regular street epistemology, is that it's a collaborative effort, but you're involving more people. So I don't know. Seems like the more the merrier.
Right on.
In a way.
All right, we'll continue on for now.
A similar perspective, because I mean, my situation is kind of different from his. Like, you say grandparents?
Yeah.
Yeah. So because my parents were brought over from the Secret War in Vietnam.
Oh wow.
So that's that's the different situation with
Right.
The U.S. government and such. But I kind of do agree. We shouldn't bar people from wanting to come to America, because everyone has different reasons, and my specific reasons, like he said, I probably wouldn't be here. Yeah, I would probably not be at the U at all. Probably in I'll probably be on a farm.
Same.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of yeah, that's just my perspective on it when it comes to my context.
What are your thoughts?
I think I'm a little bit more neutral.
Okay.
But I definitely think I'm gonna it.
Okay, I was wrong before. He wasn't on slightly disagree. He was on neutral. But as he keeps talking, pay attention to where he really might be standing.
Interesting. I'm wondering if it would have been good at this point to clarify terms, because you're saying unlimited immigration, and I wonder if the two who agree really think it should be unlimited, or just they think there should be opportunity, because both of them are in the U.S. because their grandparents and parents had the opportunity to come to the U.S. But I wonder if they really think that anyone, I don't even know how I would define unlimited immigration. I think I would probably disagree with unlimited, but that's only because of the vagueness of what does that mean?
Right.
I was thinking that before you asked them to move the first time, it might have been good to just take a moment to say, is everyone clear on the claim, and are there any questions about the claim?
That is
That's
true.
In hindsight,
They did ask for clarification as I was
And they did,
telling them to move. So yeah, it would have been better to clarify that first. Take a breather. Take 30 seconds to get that situated. Yeah, I was just excited.
But it sounds like you weren't even necessarily out there to do Spectrum. It's just you had the opportunity, so you kind of jumped into it.
It was
Yeah,
that claim was
Nice.
that was off the top of my head.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
thought you did great.
Yeah.
thank you.
It's a hard spot for me too because I actually was not born here. Yeah, I was adopted and kind of if there were restrictions, I saw like if there were restrictions on that, I wouldn't be here. And I know I just saw like China just ended their adoption program. So while that's China, not the U.S. If there was something similar here, then I obviously wouldn't be here. But I'm also pre-med. I hope to go to medical school someday. And like free healthcare is something I've become like really interested in and really passionate about. But as I've learned about it and learned about here at the U.S., and I think like free healthcare is a right. I think everyone should have access to healthcare. Free healthcare in the U.S. would be, as I've learned, it seems like it would be a disaster. Because because we already have so many doctor shortages. People already can't get access to healthcare, and if suddenly everyone just is covered by insurance, it's just going to exacerbate the discrepancies that we have now. People will have to wait even longer to get into to be able to see a doctor.
And if I'm understanding you correctly, that relates to immigration because more people would be coming to the country and it would make it more strain on the system?
Well, yeah, I don't know like the exact principles of how that relates to immigration. I just figure that, there already are so many problems in our country that I'm sure that just a sudden influx and unlimited people would just exacerbate similar things like that.
So if we can talk about something actually. Free healthcare and then also doctor shortages. I'm also pre-med. I agree with you on the fact that like free healthcare right now in America is like not a possibility because like there just aren't enough people to do it. But I think that's more of an issue with like Congress needs to budget more money for more residents and make it less competitive, prohibitive to enter like med school than it is like a number of people who need medical care problem. It's just we need more doctors, not less people. Does that make sense? That's how I see it.
Oh yeah. But that's I guess like, and I agree. Same thing. I mean, I think it's right. It's like, my mom works for Stanford Health. She sees like a lot of the finances of just how doctors get paid and stuff. And she's a finance director for them. And she constantly tells me how, if you become a doctor, like you could get hired anywhere. Yeah. We desperately need doctors. And I was like, well, tell medical schools to let more people in then. Because it's so hard. And I totally agree. Like, I think the problem is probably that we need more doctors. But that's also just not the reality that we're in too. So it's hard. It's such a difficult spot.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm hearing here is I think you guys might be on the side. You're on your position of agree because I think the underlying value might be fairness. Does that sound about right?
It's not necessarily about what's fair. It's about like, it's like I guess it is. It would be unfair for me to sit here as like an immigrant and be like, or like the son of immigrants and be like, no. No more immigrants. Okay. That would be crazy for me to say that.
It wouldn't be fair for you to be able to come to this country or your parents. Yeah. And for you to tell someone else, no, you can't come here. We've hit our limit.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. Like, I think immigration is like a very important part of like why America is so diverse and why America is so like cool. Because like, if you look at like a European country, like, I think it's like the more like I don't know if it's correct, but like Sweden and like Norway, like those countries, they have like little to no, like they're like very much like ethnically the same. Okay. Like they're very like ethnically homogenous. Yeah. Where like I think that's kind of lame. Like I want to go somewhere and I want to be like, there's like someone from Kenya, here's someone from India, here's someone from Brazil, here's someone from China, here's someone from Vietnam, here's someone from like all these other places. Like that's awesome to me. Like I get to look around like campus here and I'm like, oh, like there's like a million different ethnicities here. Yeah. That's super fun. It's like, it's unfair, like fairness for sure, but also I just think it's more cool. Like it's just more fun. Okay. Yeah. Like very unscientific.
What do you think? Is it about fairness for you while you're on the...
Man, I really wish I would have probed that a little bit. I talked about the fairness. I wish I would have dug into that a little bit more. And then he talked about diversity. I wish I would have dug into the diversity a little bit, but I was just like, okay, that's your reason. We're moving on.
Between that, there was a really interesting claim that I know when Peter Boghossian does this, he'll switch claims, and it was almost like one that I almost like wanted the switch to happen there, but there may have been, I'm not judging about it because there may be gold here, and also I don't even know how anyway, this Spectrum SE is so new. I'm not even sure like if switching is actually good, but he said something really interesting, which is because I have benefited from this, I'm not able to comment on it. Like, because I've benefited from this immigration policy, I can't sit here and say it should be different. I bet you he doesn't actually believe that he shouldn't be able to comment on things just because he's benefited. Like, because that's just like a kind of a fuzzy belief, but maybe he does. But anyway, that was really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that before or right now, so that is good insight. I like that.
I found the comment of making it easier to get into med school was an interesting claim, because
Yeah, I thought the claims about healthcare were interesting, and I wonder if
Cut
you
out.
froze there for a minute on my screen, Nick.
Yeah, me too. Cut out.
Oh.
He's
We lost
gone.
him.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be back.
Yes.
Did you have something to add to that, Bill?
Well, so I worked in emergency medicine, and we had standards, and most of us weren't interested in reducing the standard because the standards were there to maintain a high level of skill, professionalism, and not everybody made the cut. And that was unfortunate for somebody who really wanted to be involved. But in the midst of an emergency, I need to know that the guy that's working with me is highly skilled and able.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting claim.
Making it easier, yeah. Making it easier is also kind of a fuzzy concept. He could have meant a lot of different things there. So that would have been interesting to explore.
Yeah, for sure. I think for this, I saw it as a tangent. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to keep it on the immigration, because I don't think that was really too vital to any of the reasons. It was more of just a side note, I think.
I almost
Nick,
wonder if
go ahead, Cosmo.
if the claim could have been like pinned down as, because it seems like they pretty much exclusively focused on the logistical problems, and I don't know if your question was meant to go in that direction at all. Like was the question really, if all logistical problems could be overcome, should it be unlimited? Or, like, is that what you were really asking?
Oh no, I just meant it in a general sense.
In a general way? Because, there's all kinds of logistical problems that crop up when you propose anything, really. Like, even communism is a great idea in principle, but putting it in practice is the real trick, That, or so they say. I'm not an expert on communism or anything.
Yeah, I think I brought it up just because it was something that I had heard someone say recently, like that that limits on immigration, that there should be no limits on immigration, and I was just like, that's like an interesting idea, I guess. Let's talk about that. That's really where it came from. I didn't really have any clear direction. I was just like, I heard that one time. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
All right, Nick, are you back? Are you with us? I think he's still having issues. All right.
Are you muted?
Agree. I'm not. Well, kind of. Because like I said, like I come in with my context of like my parents being refugees and coming from like being I guess Hmong people in like the Southeast Asia side, especially in Vietnam. Some of us being exodized because we supported like the CIA operations back then. But it's kind of mine's kind of different when it comes with that. Like people are in need, and they need like they have to like they're seeking asylum. They can't like.
I think I understand.
Yeah,
It's about like the protecting people's well-being.
that's yeah. I guess so. When it comes to that, I do also agree with like the reason people are coming here are like for like opportunities, right? They're not coming here just to be here. They're coming here to like for the opportunity that they see, like America. Yeah, to make better of themselves. Yeah. For the resources they have here. Yeah. Of course, it's not always the reality. It's not always the reality everywhere. I think the majority of people come here and then they either find themselves disappointed or they find themselves like actually like succeeding. That's just like real life. But yeah, it's also kind of like I think we did talk about like I think of like a conversation I had back in high school in my global politics class, in which we had like we're talking about like immigration, migration, and double-sidedness of that. That being like sometimes the people who are coming are people from I guess less developed countries, and so with the cause of immigration, there's like a less what's the word I'm thinking of? Human capital for them to like help themselves to be like developed again. Of course, it's like I think of like Mexico when it comes to this, because a lot of people are coming in because it gets really bad over there with like, the cartels and such. Right. Running like the rural areas and then and all that stuff. But
yeah, I think I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's a lot about making sure people are okay, right? Like the cartels are doing some awful things. They should be able to come to our country to what's the right word? Like to have this opportunity. You said,
yeah.
Okay.
My big point is like asylum.
Got it. Okay. You heard both of these fellows. One was talking about fairness, and the other one was talking about like protection, well-being, the asylum. Mm-hmm. Are those things important to you? And I guess how does that relate to your neutral position?
Yeah, so fairness and asylum.
Gotta go soon.
Yeah, I gotta go soon. Yeah, I gotta go by one. What time? Will you guys still be out here for a while?
We'll be out here for a little bit. Right?
Okay. Would you have to go now?
No. I can stay for like another like 5 minutes, and then I can take off. I gotta leave right now.
Yeah.
I'll try to get this question. I want to ask one more question to you guys.
I mean, and I definitely. I guess I'm not saying that. That I definitely like I should be the one making decisions.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I think I know what's best. I just think we have to be like pretty smart about
like they have a balancing act, like kind of balance between the protecting other people, fairness, and what's best for people already in our country. Is that kind of what you're saying? Put words in your mouth.
No, I think it's just important to be like understanding of the implications of our actions.
Okay.
Like if we just did let a bunch of people in, like I mean, I'm sure a lot of them would suffer and die. Okay. I'm sure a lot of them would not have good lives, not have quality, would not have much better lives than they do wherever they're coming from. And I think when you mentioned that, I don't know if I kind of zoned out, but I think you said like people could be coming here and aren't even like happy or are misled.
Yeah, some people are like definitely like they come here thinking of an ideal, and then they fail to reach it. And then like it's better to be back at whatever they came from. Yeah. Like a lot of people are like that.
And that's a reality that I think. Yeah, maybe some people who are idealists think that we can just support everyone. That's not true, and we can't even.
So I didn't pick up on this. The person with the maroon shirt, I guess he had said in his little spiel that like people come to the United States and they might not be happy. They might have been happier in the country they came from, and I totally missed that the first time around. Just because I couldn't follow his train of thought necessarily, and he was speaking really, really softly, so I couldn't really hear him very well. But I found that really interesting because he was on the agree part, but he was giving like a reason against his position. So it was kind of interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it's almost like he's thinking through it and trying to come up with his position.
Yeah, that's what we like to see.
Good job, like pressing. I feel like he was being at the beginning of this part when you were talking to him. He was kind of not being forthcoming. I guess he was maybe still thinking, but good job getting him to like open up. Like that was great. Like he had a really good reason underneath there. So thanks.
Right. I kind of straw manned him to get it to it, but
Oh, smart. Yeah.
I didn't mean to. That's what I thought he was saying. But oh well.
Support ourselves in a lot of ways. But on the other hand, yeah, we do have there's a ton of people who just have too much money and too much wealth, and
That's something I didn't even think about. Is like, yeah, some people might come here and like look at how we treat our homeless population who's already here.
Exactly.
It's like if you come here and you don't have like an education that might allow you to get like a good job. Yeah, I didn't even think of it like that because like so the way my family immigrated was my parents immigrated here when they were like my mom was 15, my dad was like 18, and my grandparents like immigrated their families here. And like I realize this now, like probably back then when they immigrated, like into New York, it was probably so much easier to like get a job and to like actually like make rent than it is now with the inflated prices and shitty job market.
college degree doesn't even guarantee you a job anymore.
No.
Yeah, it's like it's not even safe.
So especially nowadays, like you may have actually just not flipped me, but like definitely that's something I kind of took for granted. It was like, oh yeah, like people coming over here are going to be able to find work, but that's not true most times.
Yeah, like I remember, like, especially in South Minneapolis, and
I think for that one fellow on the far right, I think his assumption just kind of disintegrated right there. Like he had the assumption that if you immigrate to the United States, you're like guaranteed a job, and he just realized that that's not the case. So that was nice to see him like realize that he had made that assumption.
It might have been a good moment to ask him, do you want to move from where you are to another slot? I know they're kind of winding things up, so there's some time pressure there. So,
Right.
but that would be very spectrumy to say, oh, okay. So are you reducing your confidence? Should you be in between agree and neutral?
Yeah, I should have done that. That would have been nice.
in like the migrant quarter in Chicago, where it's like a lot of like people just standing around waiting for like to be for like resources and assistance. And it's like, and most of them are like migrants, right? So like it's kind of like, do we even have like the like resources to be able to provide for people who are coming in? And so like, although like I'm on this point where like we should like not like have a limit, but I also think we should be like Dylan said, like be smart about it.
Yeah.
And like we have to like be able to accommodate to like the people we have right now and people who want to come.
I think I agree with you guys both.
Do you think you guys might be a little less strong in your stance after having this conversation?
I think my stance is still strong, but I think it's a little bit less strong, I'd say. Like I still think like, we should let as many people in, but that's the caveat, is as many people in as possible and as many people in as like we can provide for, I think is the new way I'm thinking about it right now.
Gotcha.
Because like instead of being so cavalier and brash about it, like he brought up like an amazing point. Like, yeah, like some people might come here and they might actually, you both brought it up that I didn't even think about. They might have like worse off lives. Like that completely like slipped my brain because I guess I'm still like in that whole like American dream, American exceptionalism thing that like, you think like for me, like for my family, it worked out well, but there's like, for every one of my families, there's probably like 10 other families who came here. Yeah. More than that even, who came here and it didn't work out well with them. So it's like definitely a check my privilege for a second here and be like, wait, hold on. Like I'm thinking of it in like this very privileged way when it really isn't like that. So yeah, no, that's really cool. Like I that's a different perspective from mine.
It's a good conversation.
He said that.
I was wrong. If you had laid it out as, if there were no logistical problems from the outset, then you wouldn't have even had this epiphany of his. So I stand corrected. It was better to leave it open and let people make assumptions, that may not be correct assumptions, that might be revealed to be incorrect through the course of the conversation. It's a learning experience for him, as it turned out.
What I found interesting was he said that he was still like really confident, but not as confident. But then the way he spoke and the way he like kind of added a qualifier, like technically he disagrees now. Like just saying, he does technically disagree with that qualifier.
Yeah.
So-
So he did say, I mean, and if you had clarified at that point and said, well, let's say that the claim is still unlimited immigration, would you still hold the same belief, or would that reduce your confidence to where you'd move?
Yeah.
Or the reverse claim: if you removed any logistical hurdles, would you be?
Yeah. Would the
strong?
others move
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
remove if
Would-
you remove?
would the
By
others
qualifying
move?
and redefining, he can stay in place.
Yeah, I
Right.
think if you'd had more
By
time,
redefining and qualifying, though, he didn't have.
With this qualifier, he's here. Without this qualifier, he's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the desire to not move may have affected whether or not he was added a qualifier. By qualifying, he doesn't have to move his position.
Yeah, and I didn't make it clear that they actually could move, so he might not have thought that he could walk over there. So
yeah, I feel like other times I've seen people do this, they're given more explicit opportunities to move. It's like, okay, we're going to move now. If you want to move, this is your chance to move, you know. But
Yeah.
you were limited on time at this point. They had already expressed running out of time.
Right.
Yeah, and you just jumped into it, right? It's like you made
Yeah. It's
you made the most of this situation. There have been two chats recently where I got in the position of doing SE with two people at once. Basically, I was talking to one person, and then the other person started chiming in, and so I made it part of the process. So I would say, hey, let's both. I want to get both your perspectives. So I'm going to ask one question. I want you to give your answer, and you to give your answer, and I want to see if they differ. And I particularly did it in terms of methods. And I liked that, and I want to do that more often. And I think you're kind of like in between that and a spectrum approach here. It's kind of like almost a hybrid spectrum.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my style. I kind of like what Today David does on his channel, where he brought in I forgot their names now, but it was somebody who is a Christian and someone who is believes in Hinduism, and he just kind of talked to both of them at the same time, and it was really cool. I liked what he did because he does the whole 2-day shtick where it's like, here's this guy, his name's David, and he was born yesterday, and explained to David why, it just worked out really well. So that's kind of like what he was doing, kind of what I'm doing here without the outsider test.
Yeah, so it sounds like he was doing a live outsider test with outsiders.
Well,
yes,
that's kind of the way I see Spectrum, really. It makes the outsider a grounded, real person right in front of you that disagrees with you,
Yeah.
rather than saying, imagine such a person. You don't have to imagine it. They're right there.
Right.
Yeah. So, Bill, you remember when you and I had our chat, the outsider test is, when I had my little figurine and I said, this is Al. Al is Hindu, and he has the same justification that you do. How do I, as a disinterested observer, how do I tell which one of you is correct? So what Pierce is describing is, it's kind of like having that where you have two people who have different religious beliefs with the same justification. Then how do you tell kind of which of them is actually correct?
And you're literally standing there as the neutral party in the middle. It's like,
But as I mentioned when you and I chatted, the other option is they're both wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
it's always an option.
All right, I don't think there's much left here.
Yeah,
I think it's very fair.
Yeah.
I do have to run though.
Yeah. Is it one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I also have to take off.
You guys
Thank
want a
so-
card real quick?
Sure.
There's something.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have fruit snack, water.
Yeah. Real quick. Thank you so much, Rick.
There's a card for you. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Feel free to stop by again. Thank you.
Yeah.
So your board says, what is something important people should do? That's what David calls like a normative claim, right?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. What did it say? It says, what is something important people should do? Yeah, it could be a normative claim.
In it. it has should, and it's not really a fact-based claim about reality.
Yeah.
It's more like how people should be, I guess.
Yeah,
Which is
that's kind of what I was.
Because,
That's what I was
that's
after.
another benefit of Spectrum is you can explore some of those questions more easily. I feel like the focus on the epistemology to the exclusion of other things in street epistemology, it just kind of leaves that on the table, so to speak. So I think it's a good opportunity in Spectrum to be able to do that. I don't know.
I'm liking the semantic pivot on the word important. So what's something that important people should do, or what is something important that people should do?
Oh, I didn't even read it that second way. That's not what I meant.
What is something important that people should do?
Yeah.
But you have limited space on the board.
Or what is something that important people should do?
Oh, right, exactly. It depends on the placement of the that.
It is, yeah.
Yep.
Did you guys hear that?
Yes. Are you okay?
I'm
we didn't hear
fine.
anything.
I'm actually gonna, I'm gonna drop and take care of that. It's just a lamp. It's replaceable.
I think it's better.
Yikes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well,
All right.
we're at the end pretty much anyway. Okay, good talk, everyone.
All right. See you, Jamie. Thank you.
I wanted to bring up a kind of a question, because I've been watching just by dint of following sound epistemology, and David had several sessions that he filmed at Denison University where that professor is doing Spectrum. Plus I watched one that Peter and Reed did, and so I've kind of been seeing a bunch of Spectrum.
Oh, the professor with the students. Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. I notice, so part of the definition of street epistemology in my brain goes back to something that Anthony and several other people said during one episode of the Street Epistemology podcast. And they were talking about what makes a conversation SE. Like, how do you tell if a conversation is SE or it's not SE? And one of the key things that they talked about was it's not an SE conversation unless you get to methods, right? Unless you get to epistemological methods. Like, you can talk about beliefs, you can talk about reasons for beliefs, but if you're not getting to methods, that maybe that kind of falls outside of SE. So you can believe that, and you can not believe that. I've put some stuff up on the podcast that are basically just me having the rapport building part of the talk, and then the talk gets cut off, because I think that's an important phase in SE. But what I notice with the Spectrum is it rarely, if ever, gets to methods, because it's always people explaining their beliefs and their justifications. And so we never get to examine the methods that they're using. And so that's been just a quandary for me this week as I'm watching all these Spectrum videos.
The way I see it, imagine a Venn diagram where there's methods right here, and then over here there's reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I see there being a little bit of overlap where a reason can also be a method.
Well, it implies a method, but my question is, if people are talking about their reason, their justifications, are they thinking about, because the most powerful SE talks that I see, you're getting to the point where you're asking people, is this a good method to decide what's true?
So you have to ask, why is this reason effective to get to the truth of the matter?
Yeah.
Is it like noetics?
Could be a word to describe it, I suppose.
That was something we discussed in philosophy classes back in the day, the use of your noetical equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, since it was a theology school, we were all Greek students as well. So, that kind of went together. I'm kind of curious though, because my first foray was chatting with Nick. How often are people intimidated to the point that they don't communicate well when they have to start unpacking what they think or what they believe?
It depends. There's certain subjects that are a little bit more, people are unwilling to unpack. I've noticed like politics, political things, people are a little less willing to be open. When it comes to like religious things, for example, a lot of times people are pretty willing to put everything out there and be really genuine and really be honest.
Sometimes, but I notice
Sometimes, yeah.
a lot of the time people, they put up a kind of a defense mechanism where it seems like they feel like they're not allowed to question, like it's blasphemous to question.
Sometimes.
And that's why, Bill, when you and I talked, right, it was so refreshing because, you were very intellectually honest as we went through the conversation, but a lot of people don't. They just say, oh, as an example, I just, the video that David released today was with a guy who, it was a hidden claim, but it was pretty clear after he got through a little bit of it, that it was, that he was talking about a religious belief. And at the end, he revealed his belief and they had a further conversation. And he just wasn't, he would get to the point where you would say, oh, okay, so what would reduce your confidence? And it was always, nothing could reduce my confidence. I'm always at 100%. It's like, well, okay, but if this is really the reason that you believe, let's say hypothetically, that reason went away, would your confidence drop? It's like, no, I would still be at 100%. And so that kind of defensive reaction where it's like the belief is primary and the reasons are secondary instead of the other way around. That's where people tend to, it's doxastic closure, basically. They're like, there's no possible way I could be wrong, and I'm not going to allow any thought that allows me to think that it's wrong.
That's a shame.
Well, I think
people are
that's where
afraid of
spectrum.
question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I was going to say, it's a shame that people are afraid of questions. Questions are often more interesting and informative than the answers.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But
Absolutely.
I was just
I
going to
would
say
say-
that I think that I'm sorry.
you go.
That's one of the advantages of spectrum, I think, is that you if you do not change, you're standing there in one spot, and odds are you're going to see someone else move at some point, and you're going to have to consider, why am I the only one not moving, or the only one completely resistant to any movement?
Because
So at least,
I'm the one that's right.
you know.
Of course, I wouldn't move. If I'm right, I'm never going to move.
Right.
But they could be right.
It's
I
sort
mean,
of-
that is a possibility.
They're
I mean, if you-
observing people open to change, maybe they might be more open to change, whereas with regular straight epistemology, you're being neutral, so you're not doing any changing, So I think that's a real advantage of spectrum, is that you're sort of modeling you're having other people model open-mindedness for them. Hopefully, if you can get any of them to change, then you're making a model for other people to see what open-mindedness looks like, essentially, or what might be way to get them to change.
Willingness to learn.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think maybe spectrum, or at least a certain way of doing it, maybe it can be a good model for how to have these conversations, right? When it's just one-on-one and it's this is the interviewee, this is the interviewer, and there's no real cross-talk, regular cross-talk discussion. It makes it seem like it's very rigid, it is very structured, right? And if there is that crosstalk and there's somebody guiding it to be a productive crosstalk and asking the questions that get to the epistemology. I think it's a really good
Exactly.
way to model how to have these conversations, at Thanksgiving, right? Where people aren't shouting at each other, aren't, they're asking the important questions rather than, the nonsense that usually would go on.
I don't want to be like indelicate or anything, but I was sort of thinking it as a sort of epistemological foreplay, It gets people like in the mood to sort of think about reasons and movement and then you get into the actual, like, is that really a good reason to have moved after you find out what they're, whether they're even willing to move. Because it seems like there's a bunch of hurdles that you first have to overcome in street epistemology that you could sort of get over with spectrum maybe a little more easily because you've got other people there to present claims, because you can't present any claims. You have to be neutral. So you could sort of shortcut it and say,
Yeah, it's interesting. Going back, Bill, to your question about do people get defensive? I think one of the benefits of street epistemology, if it's done right, is you actually spend time building some rapport so that you can have, and then you stay completely neutral and you ask questions. And I think people like to be asked questions. They like to talk about their ideas. And I've had remarkable conversations with people with whom, I might otherwise completely disagree. There was a gentleman, this interview is going to come out on Super Saturday. The Sound Epistemology channel is going to do a flood of political talks about the election. And so there's 3 episodes of my podcast dropping that day, one of which is with an individual who, Bill, you probably know this guy or at least know the signs as you drive towards Aberdeen. Just before you get to Ocean Spray, there's a bunch of Trump signs and then a sign that says impeach Biden on the side of the road. So I went there and I knocked on the door and I said, "Hey, I have this podcast. Are you interested?" He actually, I didn't even get to give my preamble. He just said, "Hey, come on in." And he came in and we sat in his living room and I told him what I was doing. And we talked for an hour and a half. And he didn't even know what side I was on until after that. And he said, "Well, tell me where you are." And I told him, and and he said, "Wow, well, this has been a fantastic chat." So it was, so I found it to be kind of magical. And I think when you do approach it with an open heart and an open mind, and focus on the rapport instead of focusing on disagreements, and also remain neutral and just kind of ask people questions. I rarely find anyone who, if they're willing to engage in the chat, then it's very rare that people do get defensive.
I feel like people are just naturally the protagonist of their own story. They're the main character of their own story. And so when someone comes up and wants to interview you, you're like, well, obviously, you should obviously interview the protagonist of the story, And so I think that's maybe one of the potential weaknesses of spectrum, is that you've got multiple people that you're trying to juggle and make them feel like they're being focused on at the same time. So maybe I was thinking that, that when you're asking a question of one person, it might be good to like stand with the person that you're not asking the question, like you're over there with them from their point of view. Like that way they're sort of not left out, even though they're not being talked to. I don't know. It's just a random thought I had.
So almost being the Greek chorus. So you're kind of speaking for them.
Yeah, it's like maybe sort of, I don't know, sort of involve them in the question in an ancillary way rather than, just say like, repeat what you think they said, and then while standing next to them, and then, but addressing the person, like sort of acting as an interpreter in a way. And because it sort of felt like maybe it was just your camera, but when you had to focus on one person, it felt like, I don't know what the other people were, or they're, if they're feeling involved or not, or I would have liked to have seen more more of the other people being involved when one person was being addressed in some way, shape, or fashion. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like
what
even
I
if
like
you were just next to them.
Yeah, what I like about that perspective is it kind of aligns with the times when I'm watching or doing SE that I feel like it's most successful. I feel like the interlocutor and we're both focused together to figure this thing out, right? It's not me interviewing them; it's the two of us examining their belief structure together.
And so I feel like I'll even see like Peter, for instance, he'll like go over to that position where the person is standing and he'll stand with them at that position and then look over at the person who's at the opposite side and say, he said this, how do you respond? And I sort of feel like that maybe involves them a little more, even when they're not being the one that's talked to, because you're sort of joining them in their spot and taking their side and acting as a sort of, a middleman. Sort of taking up the case, as it were. You're strong man.
Until I get a crew with to help me with multiple microphones, I don't think that'll be a possibility for me. But when that happens, then I'm all for it.
Well, the next time David does his sweep around, and when he comes by your neck of the woods, right? You could connect with him, and that's a lot of what he does, right? He sets up the camera and he handles all that stuff.
It's an option.
I think that.
I had the thought that it would be interesting to see like a double team, like someone do spectrum and then take the results of that and pass them off to a street epistemologist to delve in, because as you mentioned, you often don't get into the epistemology, but if you looked at that as a sort of an opener. And then you found out what their real reasons were, and if they were willing to change, and then you turn them over. Okay, now we're gonna investigate the methods.
Like a little breakout session, breakout rooms.
The game. It's like round 2 in a way,
Yeah.
Sounds like it has a lot in common with therapy.
Sorry, Bill.
It sounds like street epistemology has a lot in common with acting the role of a therapist. Because you explore beliefs, you explore values, you have to stand with the person in a particular way while also challenging in the right way while they evaluate those values and whether or not they work out in the real world. That's cognitive behavioralism.
That is very similar, yeah. I would say it's
a little bit. Yeah.
I wouldn't call it therapy, but I would call it therapeutic, maybe. It has properties of
what the Stoics called it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we use therapy now, but going to therapeutic, therapia was just the Stoics using some of the Socratic practices to move within reason, and their concept was that man in his nature is a reasoning animal, and so that's how he keeps within nature is this therapia, moving toward what they called eudaimonia. Yeah.
Yeah, sir.
I mean, it's meant as a compliment watching it play out with you gentlemen as I'm learning how this works.
Yeah, Bill, I was thinking that you have a kind of a captive audience, as it were, every Sunday. You could put together a Spectrum Street Epistemology session. Just ask folks if they want to stay after and participate in an experiment. If you watched a few more of these videos with people doing Spectrum, then you could try that out.
Yeah, and you could do a normative claim like this one. What people should do rather than getting into the real epistemology.
So what people should do is part of my job.
Yeah, but
what makes it great.
Right. Take some of the normative claims from the New Testament. You should give away all your money to the poor. Agree, disagree, agree, slightly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. Right? And see how people line up. I mean, that something like that would be really interesting to see.
I'd watch that. Go on the list of everything else I still have to get done.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind participating in something like that if you're interested, or I'd love to try that at some point if you were interested in doing that. But I guess I'm kind of being selfish and seeing you as having you've got an array of people, so like use them to do some interesting things. But the thing about Spectrum, where I'm concerned, is if I'm only doing audio only, Spectrum really I don't think would come across like it's a very visual thing. So I just can't see. Now, when I started this journey, I said I'm not doing content creation. I'm just doing this for myself and for the person I'm talking to. And I feel like it's going to make me better. It's going to make the world better. And it's going to help them. Then after David came out and filmed me and all that stuff, I thought, oh, you know what? I do have a portable audio recorder. I could do this in audio. And now, I have, a podcast such as it is. So now I think of everything that's the benefit of being a guy who does a podcast is it really kind of makes me feel like I have license to approach people and go into, areas where I wouldn't normally go, put myself out of my comfort zone. The downside is that now I see everything through that lens of I'm getting content instead of I'm doing this thing that's interesting. So I feel like I've gained something and I've lost something by doing that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Before I had the audio recorder and said, hey, I'm doing a podcast. Do you want to do an interview? I would just be this guy sitting at a table with a sign that says, what do you believe and why? And people would come up to me and they'd be suspicious because like, what is his angle? But these days, if you have a YouTube channel or if you have a podcast, it's a nice little shoebox people can put you in. And now all of a sudden they're comfortable.
Interesting. I wonder if that's kind of like an identity thing. Like perhaps they have that desire to have a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever. They see you with one and they're like, wow, that person is just like me, except for they went through that extra effort and actually did it. Yeah, I want to talk to them.
Yeah, it could be. I think it's people want to know what your motivation is. And if they can't figure out what your motivation is, if your motivation doesn't make sense, then they're suspicious.
Then they assume malice.
Yeah. I still have a lot of people who approach me who assume that I'm religious and I'm pushing some kind of religious agenda, especially because I'm talking about beliefs. Yeah. And so sometimes people will give me softball answers or they'll give me softball claims because they think I'm about to try to, rope them into my cult. And so it usually takes a few minutes of them talking with me to realize, oh, wait, this weirdo is just really interested in this stuff. What the heck is that about?
All right, we'll wrap up shortly here. One thing I just wanted to mention was that I didn't get a chance to say. Nick, you were talking a lot about remaining neutral, and
yeah,
I think that's really good, and it definitely can avoid like some pitfalls. Which pitfalls would be like, if you're not neutral, it can turn into a debate. They can get frustrated. They can get angry. Lots of pitfalls. I think there actually might be a little bit of a benefit to not remaining neutral, and I think Cosmo touched on this a little bit. It's kind of two things. So one, they know what category to put you in. You kind of mentioned on that, Nick. And then the other one was you can model open-mindedness or anything else you want to model. You can be like, well, if I found this out, this would change my mind. And that's how I would know this, and blah, 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 blah. So you can kind of model that behavior. And then obviously they know which box to put you in.
Yeah, I tried doing the thing that Anthony did, and Bill, for your benefit, Anthony Magnabosco is the guy who I call him the father of modern street epistemology. He's not the inventor of street epistemology, but he's kind of the guy that got everybody into it. I mean, I guess I shouldn't speak to you guys, but most of the people I talk to say, "Oh, I was watching Anthony's channel, and that got me into it."
No, you're right.
Yeah. So what Anthony did, at least in the beginning, was he hid his beliefs, so his position. So people would say, "Oh, like what do you believe?" And he'd say, "If you don't mind, I'd like to keep that hidden for right now, and I'm happy to tell you at the end." And so I started trying to do that with some of my chats, and I found that people seemed to find that off-putting. Right? They felt then that I had a hidden agenda. So since then, what I've been doing is, if they ask me, I'll just tell them what my position is or what my thought is. But I usually don't offer it.
I think Anthony switched to doing that later on. If you watch the video every time.
Yeah, and actually, with some types of chats, I will like stop in the middle and say, I want to reassure you that I do believe, especially when I believe the same thing that they believe, and I'm playing devil's advocate against them, anyway. So people say we should be kind to other people, and I'm asking questions like, well, why should we be kind? Why shouldn't we just be selfish? And they'll say, well, it's because we're all human. It's like, well, why is the fact that we're all human a good reason to help people? And then, after a while, I sort of feel like maybe I'm this sociopath who's trying to drag them off onto a dark path. And so at some point in some of those conversations, I say, look, I agree with you. I'm just trying to explore whether you have good reasons. And sometimes I explain, I want you to have good reasons to believe this, because if you believe for shaky reasons, then somebody else could come along and make you believe horrible things because the way you justify your beliefs isn't sound, right? So I want you to believe these things, but I want you to believe them for good reasons.
Right on. All right, shall we wrap up? Anybody have any final words?
I just want to say, thanks, Bill, for coming along. I love that you're interested in getting involved in this stuff, and I'll send you some more links about Street Epistemology if you want to go kind of, dig in a little bit more. And I'd love to get you invited to some of these other reviews, because I think you've got a lot of depth to bring to the conversations.
I'd love to have you here. The beard helps too. Yeah.
We're all just, at the end of the day, Pierce really just runs a beard fetish website, and that's, you're just, we're essentially trafficking you.
How did I wind up in here?
You're going to have to start growing it out, Cosmo.
Yeah.
I came in the wrong door here.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys coming on. Bill, especially, Nick, Cosmo.
Nick, just to your point, though, I think if you were just straight up honest with people and say, actually, I do not believe, but if I found a good reason, then I would believe. So that's why I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to find out if you have a good reason.
Yeah.
Let's find out together if you do. Something like that.
That is an interesting approach to take as well.
I think honesty is always the best policy. It's like, no, I don't, but I'm open to it. If I could find a good reason.
Yeah. Speaking of that, of honesty being the best policy, I once spoke with this person, and they were very openly racist, I guess you could say, and that's what we were talking about, whether one race is superior to another race. And I was very honest with them. I was like, I don't believe this, and I'm trying to change your mind. I was just straight up like, hey, that's what I'm doing here, and I'd like to ask you these questions. I'd like to figure out why you believe this. I'd like to inspect it, see if you have any good reasons, see why those reasons could be good reasons, or if they're bad reasons, and we'll go from there. That was really taxing.
Seems like you can sort of overcome lack of neutrality with just like an emphasis on the collaboration. It's like, yes, we disagree, but we're gonna work together to figure out why we disagree.
I think so.
Way more
I think so.
interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Way more interesting.
Internet lag.
I like this dance.
It's all about collaboration.
I find it way more interesting to have chats with people that I don't agree with. It's very two-tone if we agree on everything.
That is true.
Yeah, I've found I've had remarkable conversations getting outside, particularly the liberal echo chamber, and in Westport, there's lots of opportunities to talk to people who are right wing, even to the extreme of MAGA Republican, and what really is remarkable to me about them is they're all really, really sweet people who really, really care about the people around them, and they really, really think they're doing the same thing. And the thing that I find more than anything else is just that it's like the Venn diagram of the stuff that's important to Republicans and the stuff that's important to Democrats don't overlap. They're literally they're not looking at the same things. So we all think, oh, they're looking at the same facts that I am and they're coming to a different conclusion. No, they're looking at a completely different set of facts. And it's really interesting.
Let's put a pin in this. I want to talk to you about this later, Dick.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. You gotta write that down. But I guess without any further ado, I'm gonna play that outro. And thank all you guys again. It's been great. Thank you for reviewing it. You guys gave great advice, great insight.